Hello, I'm Johns. And I'm Ron's. And we are here to pod you up. We had to change our names because our identities are owned by NBC. Yeah, and we could very easily pummel the executives. But if we use our real names, those goofy men at the network will sue the humble host. And we know that's not the right word, but we can't say the real G word because it's politically incorrect. Yeah, and the network owns our catchphrases anyway, so we had to alter it. Otherwise, believe me presently and believe me in the future, we would just say... Well, isn't that spectacular? Dude, just roll intro. Hello, you're listening to the John Huff Podcast. Oh, yay. I can't compete with Dana Carvey, kids. Can't do it. See, this is the issue we deal with on my rung of the podcast ladder, okay? That is the never heard of 'em rung. So we're all out here trying our best, right? Trying to put these shows together, trying to put them out there, trying to find an audience. And while we're doing that, out here on the never heard of 'em rung, every celebrity on planet Earth is putting out a dang podcast, all right? And that particularly includes comedians. And the latest of those is Dana Carvey. Now, you remember Dana Carvey, right? Saturday Night Live, back in the 90s, there was a golden era of SNL. I think everybody thinks their high school time was like a golden era of SNL. But there actually was a golden era. There was the original kind of 70s one, right? With that original kind of small troupe. Now you watch Saturday Night Live, and I swear, like a third of the program is just the introduction of the cast. It's like there are 40 people on the freaking show now, all right? But back in the 90s, all right, there was a golden era, and it was Carvey and Phil Hartman, Mike Myers, Dennis Miller on the Weekend Update desk, Chris Rock, Jan Hooks, Nora Jones, Al Franken with Nothing to Drink But My Own Urine, Dennis. There was Victoria Jackson, who is now an ultra-right-wing Trump conservative, by the way. Didn't see that coming, did ya? So that was my era, kids. That was my high school days, and that was Saturday Night Live. And we used to watch every weekend. Then we'd talk about it on Monday morning around the water cooler at high school. There was Mary Tyler Moore singing the penis song. Remember that one? Remember that one? There was Massive Head Wound Harry. I think he probably smells my dog. All my younger audiences, all the younger listeners are like, what is this dude talking about? But if you're my age and you remember the 90s and you remember Carvey and SNL in those days, you're having a laugh right now, aren't you, right? For my money, Dana Carvey was the star of that show. Not gonna die. Loved Carvey on SNL. And now, though, those of us on the never heard of 'em rung have to look up and see that Dana Carvey now has a podcast too. And I can't compete. Can't compete, dude. Now, Carvey just recently launched the fantastic ! Podcast. And I can't compete because Dana Carvey is probably a better drummer than me. And he definitely does a better Paul McCartney than me. And that's not really a fair comparison because Dana Carvey actually knows Paul McCartney, okay? They're like legit friends, okay? Now, I can tell you stories about hanging around backstage with Ringer Starr at the Beatles Fest. And Ringer is a reasonable hand-drawn facsimile of Ringo, okay? Looks like him. But Dana Carvey can tell stories of actually hanging around with the real Paul McCartney, just being pals, man, and that gives him way better stories and way better access to the accent, okay? So I can't compete with that. And I can talk about being on the stage when Steven Tyler was performing in Toronto, which I was. In the wings, side stage, behind the white line. There's a white line on the stage, kids, all right? And if you ain't part of the show, you ain't allowed to cross it, right? Now, I was on the stage at a Steven Tyler gig, through circumstances I've probably talked about on this show before. Couldn't cross the line, though, man, so I can talk about that. And I got to hang around with his band backstage and that kind of stuff. Dana Carvey can talk about playing with Aerosmith on national television. Okay, now his stories, just 10 times up every one that I got, man. So I cannot compete with Carvey. But since we all need a laugh these days, and I'm out here trying to promote, laughter is the best medicine, and I'm trying to help you be distracted from all this COVID madness, and I'm trying to give you stuff to tune into that'll warm your goggles, and you can't just listen to me all the time. I'm recommending Fantastic with Dana Carvey because I really love Dana Carvey, man, and if you're from my era, you probably do too. If you're a little bit younger than me, you probably don't really know Carvey, and it's a strange thing what kind of happened to him. His trajectory, because it seemed to me he was poised to come out of Saturday Night Live as the big star of the bunch. And I think it's reasonable to say that Mike Myers became the big star of the bunch, and Carvey helped with that. Wayne's World, right? Schwing. You remember Schwing, right? So if you're a little bit younger, you may not even really know Carvey because he kind of disappeared for a while, and he went off into trajectories, and he had some health problems. And he kind of went away, and that's a strange thing. But Dana Carvey is one of the funniest people on the freaking planet. And his podcast, Fantastic, is just him and his hairdresser, who is the co-host, and she's great. And one of his kids, Dex, is, I don't know, I guess his kids are in like their 20s now, but he's like the producer guy, and he's there. So there's 3 of them, fundamentally, but mostly the show is Dana Carvey being Dana Carvey. And for you people who aren't so familiar with Dana, imagine if Robin Williams had a podcast. And the premise is we just kind of hit the button and Robin Williams does Robin Williams for an hour. Well, Dana Carvey is very similar. So it's like all over the place. It's just jokes coming in from everywhere. And it's impressions, and it's mimicry, and it's voices, and it's all the things I like, kids. Because you should know by now that while I don't do them like Dana does, I like the voices, I like the impressions, I like the accents, and his mind is just kind of mesmerizing. I talk about David Lee Roth. Roth is another one of my favorite podcasts, and it's the same deal, man. You just hit the button and let Roth be Roth. And half the time you got no idea what he's talking about, but he has such an interesting mind. And I don't know how much drugs, affected this. It's pretty scattered, but he's got a rhythm in his language. He's got a style in his language. You ever see kind of David Lee Roth walking around and he's like jittery and skittery and whatever, He's got this swagger. He's always, as he says, he's always dancing to music only he can hear. And he's always speaking to music only he can hear too, you know what I mean? But you turn it on and you let Roth go, and what comes out for some of us is wildly entertaining. Ditto Dana Carvey. It's all over the freaking place, right? It's a blender. If you can imagine blending up a smoothie, kids, a nice blueberry smoothie, right? And something happens whereby the lid comes off the blender and it shoots all over your nice white wall. That's Dana Carvey's Fantastic podcast, but it is compelling, man. And it's a little bit exhausting. Now, not everybody's going to go for this, okay? As I've said before, not everything's for everyone, right, kids? And if you are the sort of person who can't handle a kind of manic hour, my wife is one of those people, can't really deal with a manic hour. Maybe this ain't for you, but if you like to laugh, and if you like silly jokes, and if you like voices, and you like impressions, and you like Dana Carvey, this might be one for you to check out, okay? Fantastic with Dana Carvey. And what they'll do, there's only been like 4 episodes. This is brand new, man, brand new. And I learned about it by following Kevin Nealon, another of those cast members from back in the day, on the Instagram, on the gram, right? And Kevin Nealon, by the way, social media has taught us just how talented some of these people are, okay? Kevin Nealon, apart from being a very funny comedian and a really great Saturday Night Live cast member back in the day, is also like a really terrific artist. And he does these caricatures, something like you'd get at the carnival. Driving in the burgundy fade, man, up to the carnival. And you get out and somebody draws your caricature. And it's you with a giant head playing basketball or something like that. Kevin Nealon does these kinds of caricatures of celebrities, and he did one of Dane, and then he said, by the way, there's a podcast, and I checked it out. So I follow Kevin Nealon, I follow Carvey too, but I didn't see much about this, and then I saw that this thing existed, and I went and checked it out, right? So not everybody's going to love it, but if you're a person who digs on Carvey, and is interested in just watching amazingly talented, or I suppose listening to amazingly talented people be amazingly talented people, and you like to laugh, check out Fantastic with Dana Carvey, because they'll call like his sister. His younger sister has this incredible laugh. I can't even really describe it, but it's one of those crazy laughs that almost makes you insane, but you can't stop laughing at the same time. One of those infectious, insane laughs. Or they'll call up his former administrative assistant and they'll talk about taking private jets to someplace. And Dane doesn't do so well on the jets, right? Or they'll call up, there's a comedian or two that they've called up just to chat. It's a little less formal than a lot of the podcasts that are happening. And I know that that's saying a lot, because a lot of your comedian podcasts are comedians sitting around with his comedian buddies, or hers, just riffing, man, just riffing and doing funny things and whatever. And Carvey's like that, but it's mostly just Carvey being Carvey, and then they'll detour for 5 minutes to talk to somebody, and then back to Carvey being Carvey. And if you're into Carvey, then you should be checking out the Fantastic Podcast. That's my first recommendation today, kids. For entertainment beyond me that can help you laugh, can warm your cockles during this crazy pandemic situation. Now, speaking of Saturday Night Live, back in that golden era, I mentioned Rock, Chris Rock, and a couple nights ago, I sat down on the Netflix. I noticed that Rock has an extended cut of his most recent special, Tambourine 2018, which is now available on the Flicks. Is that a cool thing to say, on the Flicks? I don't know, man. I don't know what the kids are saying these days. I do know that I distinctly have at least one fan under 20. So maybe she can tell me, do the kids say the Flicks? Or are the kids onto something that we don't even know about yet, man? Like, the kids are always a couple generations ahead of us. Like, they got onto the Facebook, right? And they were having a great time on the Facebook, and then their parents showed up. And they're like, we're out of here, man. We're splitting off the Facebook. And then they were, I don't know where they went, Instagram maybe. And then us parents, I'm not a parent, but I'm of the generation. We turned up on the Instagram, hi, sweetie. And they're like, all right, we're out of here. And they went to the TikTok now. And I think the parents are becoming exhausted with following their kids onto social media platforms. Most of us who are at least nominally adults, we're pretty much done. You know, we got our couple of things. We might be on Facebook a little bit. We might be on Instagram a little bit. A lot of us are looking at that now going, I don't really need to be spending so much time here. So kids, take heart. We're not following you for the most part to TikTok. And whatever comes next, Pingo or Woozy Doozy, whatever the next thing is that does the thing, where all the kids go to sort of escalate the level of sexuality they can get away with in their lives publicly. Because I think that's what all the different platforms do. It's just like eventually we're going to get to, it's just straight up a porn app, and that's what we're going to get to. That seems to be the way it's going. Anyways, we're not going to follow you, teenagers. We're done. Those of us who are in our 40s or whatever, We got onto Facebook so we could reconnect with our high school friends who we hadn't seen in a long time. Now, you young people don't know what that means. If you're of the generation that sort of came of age when social media existed, you never lost touch with your pals, right? Those of us who are older than you did, okay? So when Facebook showed up 10 years ago, a lot of us hadn't talked to our high school pals in 15 years, right? And so when Facebook came along, it was like a great high school reunion all across the globe, man. And that was super cool. And then that's it, though. Like, we did it. We're friends with all our friends again. And now we find out that we don't share the same political views, so we blocked each other and yada, yada, yada. We're not following you to the next platform. We don't care because we're beginning to see a lot of this as toxic and empty and kind of a waste of our time. So go to Pingo and go to Woozy Woozy or whatever I said. Have a good time there. Try to keep it legal, kids, all right? This stuff stays on the internet forever, man, so bear that in mind, all right? Mind what you got on, okay, on Pingo or wherever you wind up going. We're not coming with you. Anyhow, Rock's got an updated extended cut of his special. Now, I got to see Chris Rock live some years ago. This was after kind of like Rock was like a big deal. He's still a big deal, but he was like a big deal at a certain point. When he did Bigger and Blacker and when he did Bring the Pain, this was like, these were watershed moments in comedy, I think. I forget which one it was, if it was Bigger and Blacker or Bring the Pain, but if you watch the video of that, wherever you can see that now, like in the introduction, I think you see like Rock walking to the stage and they're like flashing up old comedy albums, right? And there's like I think like a Cosby, before Cosby went down hard. It's like a Cosby and a Richard Pryor and Eddie Murphy. And it was like Rock establishing this, what I'm about to do is the next step, the next piece of that pantheon. And it was. On those two records, Rock brought some heavy duty stuff, man. And it was not just jokes, right? Some comedians come out and they do the jokes and they do their bits and they're really funny. Some people come out and do a straight up freaking social commentary with punchlines. Carlin was like that. Carlin was a freaking genius, all right? Carlin was a philosopher. And he could do poop jokes and in some way skewer the entire culture doing it, right? And Chris Rock is a little bit like that too. This is like a social commentary thing. And then he brought some freaking fire back in the day, man. Like really skewering cultures, including, like, you get a lot of race stuff with Chris Rock, okay? And that makes a great deal of sense, all right? But he can twist you, man. He could bring you sideways onto some stuff. And he released a couple of pretty monumental comedy albums back in the day. And Chris Rock is still a thing. He's kind of become a bit of an elder statesman now, you know? Him and Chappelle and some of these dudes from maybe 15 years ago, whatever it is, but they're still legends. They are still the best at what they do. They are still super duper pros. And we hadn't seen much of Rock for a while until Tambourine came out in 2018. Anyways, I saw Rock after the kind of Rock mania. I don't know if there was a Rock mania, but sometime after like Bring the Pain and Bigger and Blacker, I saw Rock. I went down to Windsor, drove down to Windsor, and saw Rock at one of the casinos there, the casino there. And that was a really fun night, a really cool show, except Rock kept calling Windsor Detroit. How you doing, Detroit? And dude, it's Windsor. I don't know how they explained this to you, but you done crossed a border, man. This ain't Motown. We can see it. We walk out the front of the casino, we can see it right there, right across the river, right? Where they used to smuggle whiskey across during Prohibition. We could see it, but this is Windsor, dude. This is Canada. Like, this is a different thing. This is a different country, man. You know what I mean? I'm not going to get too hung up on that. It's just one of the things I remember from that night, but very funny. Rock is a great comedian, man. And I still feel a pang. This is the thing, kids. I still feel a pang when I watch a comedy show, particularly the end of the comedy show, when the comedian, there's one of the specials, he dropped the mic. Like, dude, watch Bigger and Blacker, listen to it. Listen to Bring the Pain. If you haven't already, this is a social comedian working at the highest level, okay? And, Tambourine is great too. But it's like there's a moment where the show's over. Like, yeah, you watch enough comedy, you can sense the closer coming. It's going to be a callback to some earlier bit. Boom, then it's over. And everybody goes crazy and they give a standing ovation. And the comedian walks off. And I always feel a pang in that moment when the comedian walks off the stage and goes backstage, man, backstage to that elusive, inaccessible world. And I had the same pang when I used to watch bands, It's like, we're all sharing this experience together. Wow, this is a great space to live in, man. And then the show's over and the artist walks away backstage and it's like a door closes, It's like, wait a minute. They get to go off and still be in that great world that we were all in. But I got to go back to the office or whatever, I got to go back to my humdrum life that I'm not doing great at. No, I want that. I want where you're going, man. And I've been able to experience that a little bit, having done some touring over the past 4 or 5 years. I've been able to live in that a little bit. Smaller scale, but I've been able to live in it just a little bit. And I felt the pang when I watched Rock walk off the stage at the end of this special. It's like, oh, that elusive world back there. I want that world, man. I want to be part of that. Not just to witness it, but to actually be accepted into that backstage world would be just freaking amazing. And so as the credits are rolling on this, they shot some footage backstage. I was backstage at the Steven Tyler show, and I got to hang out with the band, and I got to see what goes on back there, And let me tell you, Steven Tyler's night does not end when he walks off the stage, kids, because he was freaking mobbed back there. All the hangers-on. People like me, and I was actually working the Steven Tyler show, okay? I was employed there that night. But I had a backstage pass. And, there were other people around. Like, somehow people get passes and they're back there. And they all want a piece of Steven freaking Tyler, man. So they're like mobbing him. There's like a crowd of people around him. Wanting a photo, wanting an autograph, wanting to be touched by Steven Tyler. And to be straight up, I wanted a photo too. But I did not ask for one. I was there with Jen of Jen Marino and the Hearts, and we worked that show. We worked like the VIP event, and we didn't bug him. We just didn't bug Steve. And I wanted to, because wouldn't it be great to have a photo with Steven Tyler? But I didn't do it. I left him alone. But I got to experience the backstage, and I liked it. So there's footage at the end of the Rock special where you see Rock just kind of hanging out in the dressing room. And there's a few folks around, but it's Dave Chappelle and it's Arsenio Hall. And it's the three of them just jamming, man. Just telling Richard Pryor stories, telling Eddie Murphy stories, just talking back and forth. And they're part of this circle, man. And again, how amazing would it be to be accepted in that circle? Not just to witness that circle and be milling about backstage, but to be actually accepted in that circle, to be part of that world, to be part of that life. There was a time when I thought I wanted to be a comedian, And it was like a flight of fancy I had. I freaking love stand-up comedy, okay? Like, I love it. I love stand-up comedy. Like to laugh, kids, like a chuckle. And there was a time when I thought, it would be great to be that, Like, I want to do what those cats are doing, When I watch Billy Connolly, let's say, who's my all-time favorite, or when I watch somebody like Rock, or I watch Chappelle's stand-up special, or I watch Maron, or I watch any of these cats playing their stand-up special to, that auditorium, those nice theaters, Lewis Black, and it's 1,500 people, or it's 2,000 people, or it's 1,000 people, or if it's Kevin Hart, it's like 40,000 people. I don't know how they do that. And I always watch that. I'm like, I want to do that, man. But there's the problem, kids, and it's one of the ways that I know I'm not really a stand-up comedian. It's that what you don't see is the build-up to that, right? So you listen to interviews with these people, you watch biographies or read biographies about them. You don't see them playing that horrendous, seedy comedy club that's run by the mob for for $25, or a cold piece of pizza. And some of them spend 20 years, man, driving that circuit. Broke, drugs, getting beat up in places, their beat up old car or some lousy rental. They got no money. They're not making any money. There's nobody in the audience, or there's 10 people in the audience. You don't see the grind, man. You don't see what it takes to get to that 1,000-seater level. And I say, I want to be a comedian because I'm just seeing the 1,000-seaters. And I'm just seeing Rock drop the mic and walk off the stage and everybody surging to their feet. I want that, man. My ego wants that. My ego's not ready to go try and get 5 minutes together. It's the other way I know I'm not a stand-up comedian, because I've tried to put together material and it just don't happen, man. I can be kind of witty off the cuff, but I cannot seem to write material. It's like I'm amazed by people who can write songs, who can write great hooks. I've talked about that. And I'm amazed by people who can write bits and who can write funny jokes and who can deliver them, I'm amazed by accomplished stand-up comics, man. The people who are the best at what they do at anything are amazing. Go watch a professional tennis tournament. Those people are amazing. Watch football, watch MMA if you like. Not my thing, but watch it. And those people are amazing. The best stand-up comics are amazing. The best drummers are amazing. Painters. The best freaking scientists in the world are stunning human beings. But you don't see the rise to that, man. And looking at it now, I'm like, am I willing to trundle around to comedy clubs in the middle of nowhere and make zero and bomb and do all the things you got to do to reach that level? Nah, but I have been willing to do it in music. And I hath done paid some of the dues in music, man. I've played the equivalent. Many times I've played the equivalent of that lousy comedy club with nobody there for no money. Many, many times I've taken a loss to play a show, man. Like the band gets all their stuff together and drives away and spends gas money and plays a show and gets paid zero. Sound man gets $200. The band who played gets zero. Many, many times. And it's a good indication, kids, of what you're really interested in doing is what you're willing to sacrifice for and what you're willing to do for free. And it also helps if you can actually do the thing. And I don't think I can do the comedy. Much as I love it, much as I'm semi-comfortable on a microphone, there is an art and a science and a freaking genius to writing and delivering stand-up comedy that I don't think I got, man. It's not evident that I have that, but I can play the drums a little and I can sing a little. And I've been out there pounding the pavement, being willing to do that for its own sake, and even to take a loss to do it, man. Are you willing to take a loss to do that thing you want to do? That's my big question to you this week, kids. What are you willing to sacrifice for? And what are you willing to sacrifice and to what level? You watch Chris Rock play that special. He's amazing. He's really funny. He's got like an hour and a half of material. He can just bang it. Dudes can walk out on stage and just command you, man. It is a stunning talent and a stunning craft. You watch, the documentary about Seinfeld. That dude would just write every day. He would just write jokes every freaking day. And he would test them and he would test them and he would work them and he would test them. And he's got thousands of pages of notes that he's kept, of all the stuff that he's written. And a lot of it's been junked and a lot of it's been reworked and whatever. But this is a craft, man. I do not, at this point in time, have the craft or perhaps the patience to try to develop it. But I do like Chris Rock, man. And I love the freaking stand-up comedy. And so I love that backstage stuff. And I pine for it. I've been backstage at shows. There was a place in Germany that the Sarah band played on the last tour. It was a little club called Manitou in the city of Forst, Germany. It's one of these weird places, man. There's a lot of these places in Germany where you're driving in the middle of the country and you're in the middle of nowhere and you're like, there's a club out here. And then you turn down a little road and boop, there's a restaurant or a venue or whatever. And you get out and you're like, Just no other buildings around, man. Who's coming to this? Like, who's coming to this, you know? There's a thing about the music world, you know, you play a club and you'll walk in and the promoter of the show or the club booker or the owner or whatever will say, oh, we got a built-in audience here, man. You're going to kill tonight. Got a built-in audience. They come every Friday night. And then you set up and you start to play and there is nobody at the dang show, man. And I've heard this said, if I had a dime for every time I've heard a club booker say, I don't know what happened tonight, man. Normally the crowd's here. I don't know where everybody is. Liar! Liar! So we show up at this club, Manitou, in Forst, Germany, and it's like there's nobody. I don't understand how there's going to be an audience. But we go in and we set up, and I can hardly begin to describe Backstage at the Manitou. Great club. Do not get me wrong. And we had a great freaking show there. But in the green room at this place, we don't often play places with green rooms. You know, there's not a lot of backstage experience because a lot of times there's no backstage where we play. Sometimes there's not even a stage. You got to kind of make one up, all right? And it's hard to be back of that. So there's this exquisitely drawn pornography on the walls in the green room at Manitou. Some very talented people out there drawing this stuff, man, and that's everywhere. And out on the floor of this place, a crazy club, man. There's like weird stuff, knickknacks and art pieces and whatever, and there's up on the wall, there's a picture of this on my website. You can read about all this on my website, by the way, john-huff.com. Go to the tour blog, and you can read about all the tours we've done in Europe, day by day. There's like a mannequin, and she's topless and extraordinarily well endowed, and she's draped in an American flag, sorta. And beneath her, standing between her legs, is a stuffed hare. I dream of Jeannie, she's a light brown hare. One for you Bugs Bunny fans. There's a stuffed hare holding a rifle. It's like the greatest logo ever for some really awful American thing. This is the Manitou nightclub in Forst, Germany, where we had an amazing freaking show. People did show, man. They always say to you, we got a built-in crowd, you're going to love it, and then nobody comes. But in Forst, Germany, that built-in crowd came. And we played a slamming show that night on a real stage with real lights and real sound. And a backstage, man, with exquisitely hand-drawn pornography on the walls. So I do have some experience of backstage. And I do have some experience of being in that world, you know. But again, to be accepted into it would be really great. Go back and listen to my interview with Nikki Bond. Nikki Bond is an aspiring comic down in LA, you know, working the scene, trying it, doing stuff. And we talked at length about what it's like in the comedy world, you know, trying to get your foot in the door. There's like this inner circle. Comedians kind of rally around each other, man. And it takes a lot to break into that circle. Once you're accepted, you're in, man. But you really got to prove your worth. You know, you've got to really work to get inside that circle. And music is much different, by the way. Music, it's like a welcoming community. We're all in this together. More and more and more, actually. For the most part, every band, every artist, every musician I've encountered in my travels has been great and welcoming and cooperative, you know. It's like we're all part of the same team, mostly. There are a few dicks in the basket, man, but for the most part, that's the way music is. Comedy seems much more closed. Comedy seems more feral, you know, not Will Ferrell, like feral. Like it's a jungle, man. Like comedy is a hard freaking game. And for the most part, it's an individual game, right? It's another thing I kind of liked about it. My ego liked the idea of it all being about me. And you wonder why I'm doing a solo podcast. And it feels like those folks are gladiators, man. They stand on their own, and there's a sacredity. There's a sacred aspect to comedy. And if you're going to step your foot into that circle and be welcomed, you got to prove that you belong there, man. Pretty cool, you know. There's a whole culture happening there. To be able to watch Chappelle and Rock and Arsenio Hall backstage, just jamming, just talking, man, I want to be part of that world. It doesn't necessarily have to be comedy, but part of that world, man, where you're part of backstage, but you're in it. You're welcomed there. You're part of it, man, and you're doing your thing, and you live in that world. It's kind of cool, man. I've had just a taste, and I liked it. Anyways, all that to say, check out Chris Rock's special. It's called Total Blackout, the Tambourine. It is an extended cut of his 2018 stand-up special, Tambourine. And it's Chris Rock being Chris Rock, man, but he's always bringing something poignant. And there's some powerful moments in this presentation where he talks about getting divorced, and he talks about his own infidelity, and he talks about his own porn addiction, and he talks about a lot of personal stuff, man. That takes freaking courage. And you got to respect that. And it is an indication of a person who's all in on this, man. You know? Because it would be pretty easy for Chris Rock to not talk about those things, and just do jokes about other stuff. But here's a guy who is bringing what he's got. He's bringing his true self to his art, man. And it is art. And I respect him for that. Chappelle does the same thing, man. Chappelle will talk about why he disappeared. Walked away from 50 million on Chappelle's show and went to Africa instead to get his head straight. I respect that, man. I respect people who are willing to talk about the real stuff. And I do not have Chris Rock's experience, right? But if there's one thing I've learned about this whole racial divide and all that stuff, is that the first step is being ready, willing, and eager to listen, And if you're like me and you have not had the experience that Chris Rock has had, it can be pretty dang valuable to listen to somebody talk about it and see what it is from their perspective. And this is not new for Chris Rock to do that kind of material, but he keeps bringing poignant stuff, man. Poignant personal stuff, poignant cultural stuff, and always very, very funny. There's a bit about bullying that made me laugh out loud. Several times I laughed out loud at the Chris Rock thing, man. And despite him repeatedly calling Windsor Detroit, Rock is one of my favorites. He's still at the top of his game, man, if you ask me. That's a very cool special, and if you need a laugh, go check it out. All right, kids, y'all ready for spinning? Whoa, Nelly, we're doing some serious spinning today, kids, because we are spinning the first record, the debut album, from an 80s rock and roll supergroup called Black Swan. Now, we did some Paul McCartney, get Dana Carvey to do that voice properly for you. And we did Gregory Alan Isakov, which is a lush, beautiful singer-songwriter album. And last week we talked about all the bands, mostly, on the John Huff Podcast Indie Out There playlist. So a lot of indie music you may not have heard before and some indie rock and roll. This week we're going straight to the source, baby. We're talking about some serious 80s-inspired metal, rock and roll, Black Swan. And this is the great Robin McAuley. I've talked about Robin McAuley on this show before, best known as the singer for MSG at a certain point in time. Perhaps the best era of MSG. Robin McAuley, who at 68 years old, still sings like he did 30 years ago. He is freaking amazing. On guitar, we got the great Reb Beach of Winger fame, mostly, also Whitesnake. Jeff Pilson of Dokken on bass, and Matt Starr, who played with Ace Frehley and at a certain point with Mr. Big, on the drums. And this is what you call a supergroup, kids. Now, I've not met any of these people, all right, but I did meet a member of Winger, and that is Rod Morgenstein, drummer extraordinaire of Winger and Dixie Dregs, but for our purposes, drummer extraordinaire of the Jelly Jam, which is another kind of supergroup of sorts, featuring Rod on drums, Ty Tabor of King's X on guitar and vocals, my favorite musician on planet Earth, and the great John Mayung of Dream Theater on bass. That is one for you guys to check out, the Jelly Jam. So here we have Black Swan. Now, they dropped a record last year called Shake the World. And that is the moment were I allowed to do so, that I would have hit play on the first track and we would have listened to it for a little while, but we can't do that. What we can do is take a little walk through it, kids. Now, I had 3 initial reactions to Shake the World by Black Swan, all right? And the first reaction was, this is upon first listen, my first reaction was, man, these dudes brought it, man. Now, I gotta be, real here, okay? These guys obviously really took this project seriously. Now, you listen to the arrangements, you listen to how some of these songs go, you're like, yep, some time and thought were put into this. They did not half-ass this record, and they could have, because these dudes have all been to the top of the mountain, kids, all right? These guys have laurels to rest on, okay? They could have phoned it in and gotten away with it, and some of the nostalgia fans may have jumped on it, you know what I mean? But they didn't. You listen to this record, it's like, yeah, man, like they worked on this thing. It sounds freaking great, extremely well produced. There's some complex arrangements happening here. There's like real, genuine thought put into this record, and that's a good sign, man. It's nice when your first reaction is, oh, hello, these dudes freaking brought it. Second reaction, Red Beach, man. I was never a big Winger fan, okay? I really didn't ever get into Winger. I got nothing against Winger. They just never really came into my circle. So I wasn't all that familiar with Red Beach, although I know he's a guitar legend and all that stuff, but I never really listened to him play. And wow, dude is shredding up a freaking storm on this Black Swan record, man. And the last thing I noticed was, of course, Robin McAuley. Robin McAuley! You have to say Robin McAuley like Michael Schenker says it, okay? In much the same way you've got to say Japanese words in a Tarantino-approved voice, right? Joyo no kane, chotto wakarimasen. You have to say Robin McAuley at least once per presentation in the way that Michael Schenker says it. Robin McAuley! All right? Robin McAuley, 68 years old now. He would have been, I don't know, like 65 or something when they recorded this. 65, kids. And continues to absolutely blow my freaking mind with his voice. He is unbelievable, man, and I don't know how. It's got to be technique. It's got to be lifestyle. It's got to be training. And it's possible to do, kids. Don't you worry. Don't you fret, kids. If you're in your 40s and you're like, oh, my voice is going to go, it's too late for me. Tisn't. Robin McAuley is the proof. Michael Sweet is the proof. Lifestyle, technique, practice. His range is wonderful. His voice sounds just like it did. And this record, to me, mostly sounds like an MSG album. If I had to pick between Winger and Dokken and MSG, for me, it sounds like an MSG record. But let's take a listen, shall we? You're going to have to use your imagination. I shall describe as best I can. To the Black Swan record, Shake the World. Now, it begins with the title track, Shake the World, and it just comes in with toms, man. Like drums pounding in the deep. You know, for you Lord of the Rings fans, that's what it sounds like. Just big, deep toms. Just, right? Setting the scene, man. Setting the stage. And then the tune kicks in. There's like this beginning kind of epic guitar thing. It's slow. It reminds me a little bit of Ghost, actually. Just a little bit sinister, you know, just a little bit evil. And then it just takes off, man. It's like a fast, banging freaking song. And you're like, oh boy. These cats are not mellowing out in their golden years, man. They're bringing it and bringing it hard. It's a heavy tune. It is fast. And then, you know, another tip-off that they took this freaking thing seriously, because there's a lot of hooks, man, just a sea of hooks on this record, man. And this pre-chorus comes in that goes to a direction you don't expect, you know, but it's great. And then a big old chorus, you know, big 80s kind of chorus, but it's like banging and it's fast. And there's like obtuse chord progressions happening. It's not exactly a prog record, you know what I mean? It's still very much an 80s hard rock style record. Sounds like that, drives like that. But there are just little subtle shifts of chord progression that you don't expect. And I twig to that, man. That says they took it seriously. That says they wanted to do something just a little bit twisty, just a little bit artistic. And it does that. And Shake the World's a great tune. Then we come to Big Disaster, which was the first single, maybe the only single off the record. That's the one that people heard, and it's great for a single, man. It's got this kind of shuffle groove. It's like heavy, though. It's like it's deep freaking pocket. And again, one of these choruses that just goes to a place you don't expect it. Which is cool, man. And I like that. I like the thought that went into this, you know. It's intuition first. You got to hear that in your mind before it comes out in the music. Then you got to make the choice to roll with it, man. Made me think of actually Killer Dwarfs. That's going to be something of an arcane reference to some of you, but I have a lot of Canadian listeners. You've listened to Killer Dwarfs before, and this tune, part of it, made me think of something off of like the Dirty Weapons record, something like that. Reb Beach just destroying this tune. Just like a guitar solo where you go, what? What? And it's not easy to do that in a musical way, by the way. Like you can shred, like you can rip. You know, I've watched guitar players do that. Kind of beat you into submission with their virtuosity. But that doesn't mean it was musical or you enjoyed it. Beach can play a solo that makes you go, what? But actually also sounds and feels good, man. And I dig the tune Big Disaster. Let me go to Johnny Came Marchin'. And this is a tune about basically the effects of war on a soldier, right? Soldier coming back. We've heard this before. But this is a great tune, man. Again with the pre-chorus. And it's got like this serious pocket, you know, about this soldier coming home. The song itself is just like, bam. Like it's just a great freaking pocket song. Here's another observation I had, all right, of this record. There are several songs on it where you have to move, where involuntarily you will move. If you're a fan of rock music, particularly if you're a fan of 80s inspired rock music, like this is your jam, like you get this, like this is in your DNA, man. Like when you were 17 years old driving in the Burgundy Fade, this stuff got infused into your system via your ear holes. If you twig to this stuff, man, if you respond to this kind of music, you must move. Your body will move. Johnny Came Marching is one of those tunes, man. Made me think of Tesla's Modern Day Cowboy. You can look for a comparison there. Some of you who are into the Tesla. And Robin McAuley. Dude, Robin McAuley just singing his ass off on this record, and particularly on this song. We go to Immortal Souls next. And for me, kind of a Skid Row vibe. If you're into Skid Row, maybe this is a tune to check out. It just comes in with like this Pilsen on bass, man. There's this low driving bass lick in the drums. Like the rhythm section stands out for me on this one. Just again, this killer deep pocket, man. That ain't easy to do. And as a drummer, it's like super fun for me to sit kind of in this tempo. And you gotta move. Stank face comes. Two things, songs where you gotta move and songs where the stank face comes. And you know what I'm talking about. If you're a musician, you know about stank face, man. This is another involuntary physical reaction where you're digging into a song and the groove and the pocket are just enough that it causes a weird kind of chemical reaction in your body that curls your lip, pops up the lip, furrows the eyebrows, stank face, your nose wrinkles just a little bit, you know? That's this groove, man, on Immortal Souls. And the rhythm section, rocking it, mid-tempo rock and roll tune. Great tune. Another great freaking chorus. I'm amazed by the writers of choruses and the writers of comedy bits. It is a talent, man, and a skill that I do not have, but these guys do. And then there's a ballad. You still gotta have a ballad. Although this is kind of a rockin' ballad, still a ballad called Make It There. And this might have been released by Cheap Trick in 1989. Can you hear that? Can you hear that kind of vibe? Cheap Trick 1989, The Flame. It's kind of got that thing going for me. And I love that song and it's great, but I'm like, it's called Make It There. It's about a relationship breaking up. And I got two reactions to that. I got one, do people still sing about breakups? Like, I don't know if they do, man. Like, I know this record was not made for the kids. This was not aimed at your 15-year-old son, right? So I guess maybe people who grew up in the era where we sang about heartbreak still sing about heartbreak and still experience that. And, if these guys are in their late 50s, early 60s, that means that their target audience is probably late 40s, early 50s. Maybe the divorces are happening. I don't know. Or maybe their kids are breaking up with people and they can relate in some way. I found some cognitive dissonance about 60-year-olds singing about the heartbreak. I feel like at that age, you should be able to just it rolls off your back or something. I don't know. Do hearts? I guess they do. And okay, it's a good song. I liked it. Felt a little bit weird. Maybe it's about the second divorce. I don't know. But it's a ballad. Sounds like Cheap Trick or maybe John Waite. And you knew it wasn't made for the radio because it's 5 minutes and 49 seconds long. I had some more lyrical cognitive dissonance about the next tune, She's On To Us, which seems to me to be about an affair. She's on to us. So a second ago, you're lamenting that it's over. And now, a second later, I think she knows about the affair, man. So I don't know if that's, it's not a concept album. I don't think it's a concept album where the songs run into each other and tell a story. It's just an interesting feat of sequencing for me to have My Life Is Over and My Heart Is Broken. I don't think we can make it there. By the way, babe, I think she knows about us. So I don't know if maybe there was some tongue-in-cheek happening there, but that tune, I had two reactions. It sounds like a love-hate song. Another Arcane reference, I know, but if you have listened to Love Hate's magnificent record, Blackout in the Red Room, this tune, She's On To Us, feels like it could have fit on that Love Hate record, which is one of the great rock records you've never heard, by the way. Go listen to Blackout in the Red Room by Love Hate. That is a freaking banging early 90s hard rock record, and Love Hate came just at the end, man, just at the tail end, just before grunge killed the whole scene. This Love Hate record kind of came out, and not a lot of people know about it. And they should, because it's a great album. This tune feels like it could have fit there. Chorus felt Great Whitey to me. Not Great White towards the kind of the peak Great White, which was the Once Bitten, Twice Shy, all that stuff. And they were playing bluesy hard rock. Early Great White was quite a lot heavier. And they were actually more of a metal band in the early days. And this She's On To Us feels like Great White in the early days. Then we go to The Rock That Rolled Away. Another big banging song. And I worried at that point, though, because it's a great tune. It's a good song. And it's a fast tune and it's heavy. And I like that these guys brought it heavy. They did not wimp out on this record, man. They did not retire on this record. They brought it heavy and I dig it. And that song is what it is. It's a banging song. But it made me worry, man. It made me think, uh-oh. Black Swan's running out of steam here. It's good, but it's okay. And I worried at that point that the rest of the album might slide downhill. And my worries were unfounded, kids, because the next song is Long Road to Nowhere. Not a new idea for your rock and roll vagabonds, but a great tune. It starts off with this Van Halen guitar kind of harmonics thing. Very cool. And then just this groove comes in and your stank face comes and you start moving. You start moving when they start playing Long Road to Nowhere. You cannot not move. You must move. You must feel this in your loins, man, and start just moving. And the stank face comes and they got you. They got you with another great chorus on Long Road to Nowhere. Then Sacred Places comes along, and I am picking up the tempo here because, again, we're getting to be long into this episode. Reb Beach destroying on Sacred Place. And, yeah, Beach killing it. Deep groove. Awesome. Lots of energy, man. There's energy all over this record. It's so satisfying when a group of dudes who have laurels to rest on stand up and bring the energy to a record like this. Because they didn't need to, kids. They didn't need to put this out at all. But they did, and they took it seriously, and they say, we're going to come and we're going to punch you out, man. We are going to rock your socks off in a way that you have not heard since 1991. This song is another example of that. Then we get to Unless We Change, and your stank face comes back. It's heavy. Again, some really interesting backup vocals happening on this. This is a well-produced record, man. There's a lot of nuance happening. Believe it or not, for what is an 80s-inspired hard rock record, there's a lot of nuance happening. You see that, you hear it in some of the background vocals. The record ends with Divided United, which is a piano tune. Kind of almost feels a little bit Beatles, the way the chords progress. It feels a little bit Beatles. And again, get Dana Carvey to do that for you. Get him to sample it. And I felt like there was some Queen kind of guitar happening here. I know, unexpected, right? Felt a little bit like that. And it's a piano song. And then halfway it just blows up. Just blows up. And it's like a political kind of song about division and unity, you know? And that's a funny thing that bands used to do back in the hair metal era, right? Because all the songs would be about getting chicks, man. We're going to get wasted on whiskey and we're going to get with some ladies. And then the next song would be about a Vietnam vet. So I don't know. It's one of those divided united, but the tune just picks up halfway through and, you know, it sort of exits the album rocking pretty hard. And I'm going to sort of sum this up right now and say, if you're into the rock and roll, man, like it used to be, the way it used to be, but this record sounds modern, but it's so inspired by the way it used to be. Go check out this record by Black Swan called Shake the World, man. And I feel like it's another one of those ones that kind of came out and then there's no tour. We can't tour because of the COVID. So I don't know if they were planning to play shows or not, but I think having listened to the music and knowing what I know about these players, those shows would be just chaos, man. Those shows would be really freaking great. And I would like to see one. So kudos to you, Black Swan, for dropping what is a really cool little record. Happy to spin it here on the John Huff Podcast. And of course, you can go to the referenced on the pod playlist on your Spotify. And I will put one of the tunes from this record on it. And you can hear some of the other music we've talked about along the way. And I was going to do another segment, kids, but I ain't going to now because we're at like an hour. And it's time for me to go. It's time for you to go. Check out Dana Carvey's fantastic podcast. It's a lot of fun. Check out Chris Rock's extended cut of Tambourine. Also a great little comedy special. Listen to some Black Swan. I'm just going to stop talking now, kids. The easiest way to end is just to stop talking. So I'll check you later. Thank you once again, gentle listener, for taking in today's show. If you want to know more about the program, go to www.john-huff.com. That's JOHN-HUFF.com and click on podcast. You can also find the show on Facebook at The John Huff Podcast. If you're an Instagram person, you can find me at JW_Huff. If you're a Twitter person, you can find me at JWSHuff. No matter where you listen to the show, please do me a big, big favor and leave a rating and review. Preferably a positive one. That's all the time we have for today, but I'll be back very soon. Until then, keep your wits about you and remember, good things happen when you put yourself out there. Bye for now.
You know what I'm going to do someday, Sammy? I'm going to be a big-time podcaster. I'm going to get a nice microphone. I'm going to put out a new episode every week. I'm going to inspire the people. I'm going to... who am I kidding? That's another thing I'm never going to do.